Although we typically learn about the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the causes of World War I were more deeply rooted. The roots of World War I lay in the intense political turmoil which marked the turn of the century Europe. This turmoil was mainly in the decline of the Ottoman Empire, competition between the UK and Germany, and Russia's embarrassment. The fall of Constantinople is the first point here. The fall of the Ottoman Empire is the first point. Ever since the fall of Constantinople, the Ottoman Empire has been kind of expanding until kind of its peak in 1683. Now, at this time, it reaches all the way up to Austria, and they were attacking the city of Vienna. The city of Vienna was being sieged when the King of Poland came and attacked the Ottomans in the middle of the night. And they just got absolutely destroyed. So the Ottomans all ran away, and they left behind, interesting fact, they left behind coffee beans, which the Europeans later learned how to make coffee, and especially the Austrians. But who were the Ottomans? So they were Sufi, which is a faction of Islam, and that was like a very kind of mystical, superstitious faction. One of the things they would do is they would spin in a circle, kind of standing on one leg, but then using the other leg to kind of spin them around. And they would do this for hours, wearing kind of like skirt things that fly up, and they would drink Turkish coffee to give them energy. And after a while, they would have kind of visions, so to speak. After this battle, the Austrians invented croissants to kind of celebrate the victory, because croissants were shaped like the moon on the flag of the Ottomans, and they would kind of eat them as kind of a way of rubbing it in, I guess. So after this battle, the Ottomans kind of started to lose the empire. Next, they would lose Greece. Greece became free with the help of the Brits. They also faced some internal turmoil. So a group called the Young Turks, which was kind of this new ideological movement, they performed kind of a coup on the Islamic State, and this coup was so they could make the government more Islamic, because they felt it had become too kind of neutral. So because of this internal fighting, they lost many countries in southeastern Europe, and so they were kind of just being declined. One of the countries that became free, Bosnia, was being taken over by kind of the country of Hungary. And this is kind of key, because what they did was, because they're Orthodox and Russia is also Orthodox, and they're very similar, so they kind of like, oh, Russia, would you help us? Like, calling on their big brother to come beat someone up. But Russia had already made a deal with Hungary, so they didn't help. And this is So this is very important, because later, when Archduke Ferdinand of Austria would start to kind of become friendly with Russia, many of the countries in that area who had kind of experienced this were worried. And this is why a group of Serbian nationalists tried to assassinate him, to show the Austrians that they would not be taken over again, like the Bosnians were, and many others. But Archduke Ferdinand, a little bit about him. He was named Franz Ferdinand of Austria, and he was married in what is called a morganatic marriage. Which was where he was royalty, and he married someone who was not royalty. So it was kind of a secret marriage. They weren't allowed to like go out in public together or anything like that. Not in Austria, at least, which is why they were in Serbia. They went to Sarajevo, is that how you say that? which was a place in Serbia, and that way it was kind of like a vacation, and they could spend time together in public because they weren't in they couldn't be seen together in Austria, and that is where they both got assassinated by the Serbian nationalist group called the Black Hand. It's kind of a cool name. Oh shoot, I forgot the quote. This is about croissants, as I mentioned earlier. Croissants are Viennese and were created in celebration of the Habsburg defeat of the Ottoman Empire in the Battle of Vienna in 1683. Chris Pritchett. Thanks. Okay. Point 2. The conflict between UK and Germany. So, as we remember, the German group of kind of nationalists founded by Frederick Ludwig von were called the Turners, and they were kind of the gymnastic people. So in that time, there were kind of many Germanic states. It wasn't really one country of Germany as it is today. But Germany was kind of going under industrialization at the time, and they were like becoming more not civilized, advanced, and they started to do things like make cars and So later there was a war between the French and the Prussians. So the French, so we'll come back to Germany, but the French thought they would very easily win. It wouldn't be a problem, and that was under Napoleon, I believe. Yeah. But the Prussians, however, they had fought the Danish, and they learned, this is a lot closer to World War I, about many of the new modern, modern warfare techniques, such as trenches. And so the Prussians actually won. And so they beat the French. But then to kind of rub it in, they turn around and they go make themselves even powerful by they actually make themselves into, or they kind of make a single German state. So they, in a way, kind of take over Germany. And so now there's only one German state like there is today. And so Germany wants to be, like every other country in Europe. So they decide to make colonies. They make some African colonies. They even says they rented a country, which is a little strange, a colony at least. And they also made a very large navy to protect the colonies. So now this is very interesting what's happened here, because once they make a navy, that's kind of like, that's Britain's thing. And so they're no longer so, buddy. But this is called a Thucydides trap. So a guy named, I think, Thucydides kind of came up with this idea originally for Athens and Sparta, but it was the idea that if two countries are both powerful at the same things or good at the same things, they will eventually have to fight. So that was kind of a growing conflict in Europe. As Graham Allison says, when one great power threatens to displace another, war is almost always the result. The third point is Russia's embarrassment. Russia had some conflict with the Japanese. So the Russians have a fort kind of near Japan called Fort Arthur, I believe. Yeah. And the Japanese siege the fort to starve out the Russians, and the Russians have a lot of food, but they surrender right away, which is kind of embarrassing for Russia. So to make up for this embarrassment, they launch they're getting ready to launch a full-scale attack on Japan. So from St. Petersburg, they're going to go to Japan, which, as you know, if you know anything about a map, that's a long way. So essentially, what they do is they get all these huge boats and they just load them, pack them up with soldiers, um, and they set out from St. Petersburg. Um, so, um, so they're going out kind of for revenge and to make themselves look better. But it's not going super well. So after the first day, one of the boats is run aground. Um, Another boat soon after did the same thing. That same day, a torpedo boat ran into another ship, um, and the Danish ships delivering them coal kind of bumped into them too, and so they were all just bumping into each other. It was kind of a mess. They're all kind of dinged up and banged up or whatever. Um, so now they're kind of approaching England, um, and so they're kind of thinking that the Japanese are going to have boats waiting for them, um, kind of near the English Channel, I believe. So what they do is they're afraid of being ambushed, so they tell all the crew to stay up all night. So as you can imagine, there's like a whole on deck is just packed with people, and they're all just super tired, um, just looking out into the darkness. So after a while, they start to see kind of boats coming closer on the horizon, and they're all really tired and stuff. So they all just like go crazy, just like open fire completely, um, just destroying stuff, just shooting at all the boats. Uh, there was one boat that they shot 500 rounds, and they didn't even hit the boat. And these are huge rounds, so um, they just kind of go ballistic on these boats. And as the sun rises, they start to see that it was just a bunch of English fishing boats, and they actually missed a lot too, so they didn't even hit that many boats. So this was really embarrassing for Russia. And on top of this, the English were now very angry at them because the Russians didn't really apologize. And so the English said they were going to keep the Russia from going through the Mediterranean Sea. So kind of the Russia's plan was to go uh, around Europe and then go through the Mediterranean Sea, through the Red Sea, down around to Japan. But now they have to go all the way around Africa because the English won't let them go through. So as they're continuing on this kind of nightmare of a journey, they're going around Africa, but obviously they were planning to take a much shorter trip, so they didn't have enough coal to get there. So they spent a lot of time kind of off the shores of Africa waiting for coal to come from St. Petersburg so they could keep going. But here's the thing, these are all a bunch of Russian guys, and there's like a ton of them on this boat, so they're not used to the heat, and it's very, very hot. They're close to the equator, and they're packed in there. So it was probably unbearably hot. I'm sure they were in very close quarters on like bunks. They probably slept two to a bunk. And they were also, so as you can imagine, it was very sweaty. I'm sure it is even said that, I'm sorry, where was it? Oh yeah, there were also lots of rats. It is even said that one of the rats drowned in sweat on the floor. So as you can imagine, it probably wasn't very comfortable. But there were a lot of rats. As Eugene Politsky says, Politsky, I don't know. Lying on my back last night, I watched the rats making themselves at home in my cabin. So in this kind of state, all the crew are just feeling awful. It's not going very well. As you can imagine, when they get to Japan, they just absolutely get destroyed. So when World War I comes around, they're kind of looking for another chance to prove themselves after all this embarrassment with Japan. Although we typically learn about the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the causes were more deeply rooted. The roots of World War I lay in the intense political turmoil which marked turn-of-the-century Europe. This includes the decline of the Ottoman Empire, competition between UK and Germany, and Russia's embarrassment. Thank you.